This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication.
This is Johnny Bluestar. We're back on Threshold Radio with Dr. Hugo Rodier, a medical doctor who believes that the foundation for good medicine depends on an understanding of nutrition. Dr. Rodier is also a Mason and is sharing today his insights as to the essential teachings of true Masonry. We will now continue with our first hour's discussion. Now, a lot of times we hear how religion was the fundamental basis for the founding of America. But when you go deeper, there seems to be a connection between Masons and the Masons themselves and the founding of our country. I've heard that 1/3 of initiations during the Revolution took place in Washington's tent. Here's an excerpt from a book called America's Secret Destiny by Robert Hieronymus. Quote, "The underlying philosophy of Masonry, the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God, was the foundation of political, religious, social, and educational reform, which was opposed by the monarchies of Europe and ecclesiastical authorities as well. Washington's leadership and involvement with the craft gave him the confidence that America's military secrets were safe. His involvement in Masonry as master of the lodge provided him with more than confidence, because the lodge's rituals' function was to elevate the participants' consciousness. A group of Freemasons experienced the rituals and initiations in an altered state of awareness, provided the internal strength and fortitude for them to grasp the importance of the American revolutionary experience and its meaning for humanity as a whole. Thus, the Atlantic Ocean, guerrilla tactics, and King George's conflicts contributed to the defeat of the English army, but so did the Masonic experience. It provided Washington with the will and capacity to defeat King George when the world expected America's defeat." That's the quote.
Beautiful quote. Thanks for sharing.
Do you feel that there is an alteration in consciousness that occurs because of participation in these rituals? And
yes, we are really into ritual.
Do you believe that there is something to the statement that there's an altered state of consciousness that results from participation in the rituals and exchanges of brotherhood within the lodge?
Absolutely. I can go by my own experience and talking to other brothers. Yes, I often hear the same, but when I was initiated, I couldn't sleep that night. And I wish I could relate all those metaphysical thoughts that came through my mind. But basically, yes, if one goes in with the right attitude, of course, that's always the state of the recipient that's most important. That person will accrue a whole lot of benefits. Our rituals are steeped in antiquity. They're there for many reasons. And again, they're not secret. You can look them up on the internet if you want, this day and age. But let me tell you, ritual is deep in the heart of man, and a lot of modern people don't understand that, and it's a loss. I mean, think of the rituals of men becoming men by hunting or going to war, and all those things. Might sound primitive, but they really were rituals of initiation of a young man into adulthood. And of course, they're no longer that violent, but a lot of people lack that anymore. And so ritual is how we take steps towards spiritual development. And one of them is becoming a man. As you said, we need to step by step reach our potential. And of course, we have 3 degrees of ritual, where a person becomes a master mason or a 3rd-degree mason. And you can stop there and study all the things that those 3 degrees give you in regular lodge meetings. But there are other masons who want to go further, and they join other sub-Masonic organizations, if you will, like the York Rites or the Scottish Rites, and they get into more ritual, and more experiences like that are available to those who want to go further. But the 3 degrees have everything. It just is very veiled because of the things we talked about before. We feel that a man has to do a little bit of work and progress at his own pace.
One of the things that I found out, I was looking for a certain kind of teaching, and I came across a book called the Apocalypse Unveiled, and by James Morgan Price. And in this book, it described the kind of code which were related to astrological and alchemical symbolism. One of the aspects of this code was that the name Jesus in Greek, in actual Greek language of the time, Koine Greek, where they did not have Arabic letters, came out to the number of those letters came out to 888. And interestingly enough, the number of the cross, which is stauros, which in Koine Greek, there was no longer the digamma that was equal to 6 that existed in earlier forms of Ionic and Attic Greek. It came to 777. Now, within the context of the Revelations of St. John, the most famous number is 666. So these are kind of important repeating decimals, and you wonder why they actually existed. Well, I believe that they existed because there is a teaching within Christianity which is very, in my opinion, very Masonic based, and is and was probably taught by Jesus, but is totally lost, as those documents often have been doctored so that there's not very much left of them unless they're expressed purely symbolically. Not just because you want to protect people from disagreeing on things, but also because of the dangers of being uncovered by the wrong people and, going to the stake, like we were talking about before.
I absolutely agree. I'm sure you're familiar with the rings and the lapel pins that some Masons wear, where you see the square on the compasses.
Yeah.
And you know what letter it's in the middle of it?
G.
Which stands for geometry.
Uh-huh.
So geometry and Masonry were anciently synonymous words. And we really get into geometry, numerology, not in an open fashion because of the things we talked about, but for those Masons who want to dig and really like to get into the things as I see you are doing, there are mines of wisdom buried beneath the surface. And I'm one of those Masons who delights in all that. And you're absolutely right. The numerology of Masonry is astounding. The whole thing about the planets and the spheres and the universe, as above, so below. It's so true. In fact, that's one of the meanings of the square and the compasses, as above, so below. As you know, Masonry, in its finest philosophical reincarnation, is very Kabbalistic and Hermetic.
Uh-huh.
And if you know what those things mean, then just we can talk about this all night long.
Well, we'll be talking about it more when we come back, because we don't want to leave this part of it out. So we'll be back in just a few moments on Threshold Radio. This song was the second song Edgar Ahrens and I created for an album for Patricia called Hadley's Castle.
Shrieks make me cry. I remember the joyous glee that it stole from my eyes. I remember that day when the wind swept away life's dear comfort and warmth on that bitter autumn day. Maple leaves curl and quiver and flail in the air. The rude act of dying paints red brown everywhere. But I know harsh enchantment can't turn the love astray, because love never withers. Love never withers.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them!" Again we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's West Side Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
Welcome back to Threshold. Today's topic is the essence of true Masonry, and we're with Dr. Hugo Rodier, MD, who is sharing some of his experience and insights into the reality of this incredible tradition, which is so vastly misunderstood today. We were talking about some of the symbolism, both numerical and astrological and so forth, that exists in Masonry. And I want to give you a very fanciful concept, okay?
All right.
See, the Masons are really talking about building, right? And perhaps the most iconic aspect of that building is the building of a temple.
King Solomon's temple.
Mm-hmm. And that is where, how's that connected to the Knights Templars?
Well,
you didn't tell that story, so why don't you tell that story?
Can I tell a story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, about 9 French knights from the part of France where my family comes from, Albigensia, the Cathars.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting in itself.
Yes, and it gets better because I'm very proud of what I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
These 9 knights decided to go to Jerusalem, who had just been taken over by the Crusades, and it was being governed by a French king. So they got up to Jerusalem and said to the king, hey, let us guard the roads from here to France and the rest of Europe so that pilgrims wanting to come and see the Holy Land will be protected. And so the king said, sure, what do you ask in return? Well, we just want to serve God and king, but let us stay at the temple of Solomon, which was in ruins, and we'll just hang out there. A lot of people think they had ulterior motives because they wanted to dig around the ruins, hence the name Templar. It turns out that my name, Rodier, in French means road keeper.
Ah.
And the coat of arms, and you can look it up, the Rodier coat of arms, is a Templar, Templar coat of arms. It has a chevron, which means protection. It has a line, which means serving for protection. It has 3 castles, which is a Templar symbol. And it has 3 black heads, which is Islam people were felt to be darker than the lily white Caucasians in Europe. So I have a Templar coat of arms. Now, as you know, Johnny, Templars became very rich because of this trafficking back and forth. They started banks where you could carry a note from Jerusalem to France, not money, and that note would be redeemed when you got to France, so you decreased your chances of losing your fortune on the way. So Templars, as you know, founded the banks of Europe.
Right.
And it turns out that Rodier was the founder of the Bank of France. And so I'm very familiar with the whole story.
Oh, A. Rodier, one of your ancestors, right?
Yeah, Rodier was my father, who was a Frenchman. So I'm very proud of that heritage. But I still believe what I told you. I don't think we have a clear connection between those Templars and modern Masonry. But I think we do when it comes to a spiritual connection of like-minded men.
Don't you think it's peculiar that 9 men would think they could protect
Exactly.
all these travelers coming? I mean,
right.
It just seems like where they wanted to be was that temple, because once they got there, they excavated it, didn't they?
Exactly. So that's why I laughed at the beginning and I told you about ulterior motives. Now, they became strong enough where they carried out that mission, but not 9 guys at the beginning. So, yeah, a lot of historians think that their main motive was to tool around the temple ruins.
And what do you think they found there?
You know, a lot of, this is my opinion, okay?
Okay.
It's like the whole thing about the quest for the Holy Grail. A lot of people think, oh, it's the blood of Jesus, Jesus' descendants. Other people think, oh, it's just riches of untold vastness, you know, a big treasure. You know, Johnny, I think these are all allegories of the lost word. The concept that we live in darkness and have forgotten who we are, who God is. Isn't that knowledge the most precious to be had?
Yes, but you know, it may be also true that this is one claim, okay, that what they found was connected with, say, the true history of Jesus' teaching.
Yes.
Which we know has been, well, not we know, some of us believe, has been ruthlessly suppressed.
Oh, absolutely. But that's what I mean by the lost word, because I believe exactly what you said.
And perhaps these men, in their own way, try to revive and continue this tradition, but somewhat secretively, because
exactly. And look where it got them.
Eventually, though, they did become quite successful along that road.
They did, and most of them had a vow of poverty, so it's not like they were swimming in gold coins. Yes, they did have a lot of money, and they used it for good for the most part. I mean, whenever you get money injected into any organization, it's going to be hanky-panky because we're men, we're mortals, we're imperfect. But I think the vast majority of the Templars were committed to poverty. I totally agree with you that the real treasure was the knowledge that you speak of, which we symbolize by the lost word.
Well, to just add to that little mysterious thing that we're talking about, and the possibility of other interpretations, is there is actually a reality TV program on which purports that this Templars not only made their money through banking, but through piracy, or at least through a connection to piracy.
I saw that Walter, what's his name on the History Channel, Scott Walter, made a connection between the Templars after they got dispersed. They flee to Portugal, and from there they went to Madagascar and became...
Right, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I saw that. And no, that rings true to me. As above, so below. We live...
Exactly.
Yeah, we live by spiritual guidelines, but we got one foot on the ground. I hope we do, because when we have neither foot on the ground, we become pretty flaky. So I'm a pragmatist and also a romantic. I strive for balance, which is a very Masonic thing to say.
Well, we're going to get a little bit more in depth into what that balance might be from an esoteric point of view in just a few minutes. We'll be right back. One of our most frequent guests and a regular participant in our roundtable discussions is attorney novelist Kenneth Eade. Here's a clip from his novel, Terror on Wall Street. We use this novel as a springboard for discussing what would happen in a potential financial crisis in one of our programs available on www.thresholdradio.com. Here it is.
It was like the beginning of the end of the world. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That's what the survival hawks had said, but everyone had always thought they were crazy. Now, she realized they were right, as she watched the mobs of people looting the streets of Chicago, smashing windows and breaking down doors, as the police stood by in their riot gear, doing nothing about it. The sky was already a hazy brown, probably from all the fires. She could hear the fire engine sirens and had seen plumes of smoke from all over the city on her taxi ride from the University of Chicago. Keep enough cash in case of emergency. Even her economics professor, Harry Mason, who was a relatively conservative buy-and-hold investor, had advised her to keep cash just in case, and to also have some hard assets in a portfolio. Shirley Baxter, called Snooky by most of the people who knew her, looked out the window of the cab at the chaos outside that used to be the streets of Chicago. Some people were carrying huge bottles of water, and some were rolling shopping carts filled with food. Others were stealing the spoils from each other. A rock suddenly hit the side of the cab with a loud clank, just missing the window, and Snooky ducked down. "You don't want to go out there," said the cab driver, a rough and tough type with a pack of cigarettes rolled up in the sleeve of his t-shirt. "Will we make it?" "Oh, you'll make it to the airport all right. I don't know about your plane. Where are you headed?" "Washington. I'm supposed to be in a group who's testifying before the Senate Finance Committee." "Well, you tell them for me that they've screwed everything up. Excuse my French, but there's no other way to say it."
Here is an example of Different Worlds, an instrumental by Edgar Ahrens. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Aron for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you're in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy, we ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words, Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
This is Johnny Bluestar back with Hugo Rodier discussing the essence of true Masonry. And we've been talking about alchemical symbolism. And I'm going to present you with a very, I would say, controversial concept. You see, remember how Jesus says, the temple will be rebuilt in 3 days. You remember that? He's talking about his body.
Right.
Well, some people might say that the purpose of the builders of the temple is to create a different form, a different kind of physical existence, which is more harmonious with the divine nature, which is symbolized, like you've mentioned, by such things as particularly like the Tree of Life.
The Kabbalistic Tree of Life.
As an example.
Right.
Do you think it's possible that the goal of some of these spiritual practices is actually to create a body that's sort of like the body of resurrection that Jesus had, which basically is not geared totally to it's not pegged to the material world, so that it operates out of a different realm or plane of existence?
Yes and no. Let me explain. I think the danger here is that we take all these symbols and we translate them in material terms, like we talked about the Templar treasure. And it could be the blood of Christ. It could be some bunch of gold cups and coins and pearl necklaces. But I believe, like you do, that the real treasure is this lost knowledge. So I believe, like I said about an hour ago, that our true goal is to become one with God and mankind. Now, as to what shape that takes, do we get these light bodies? Do we get these ethereal bodies? you see, those are all concepts that try to say the same thing in terms that are more material. Because once we become united with this consciousness, which is what the allegories talk about of returning to the presence of God, there is no need to want to try to figure out what that will be like. I can tell you, Johnny, I have no clue what that will be like because I don't understand. My mind is too small to understand the wholeness of the universe and the consciousness of God. In essence, the word is lost. But I have hope that I will come to know as to how that will take place, what kind of shape that will be. I believe it's pure speculation fueled by wanting to speak spiritual truth in material terms. So I believe that's where you inject all these ideas about bodies of light or transcending to a higher sphere. And some guys get really wound up on this and will tell you that we'll be taken up in UFOs and take off into some planet or star far away where God lives. I don't know. I believe that there's a danger here where speculation. Look, Moses said it best, to the unknown God, meaning that we really don't know, and to pretend to know, it's one thing. To speculate is another. As long as we can speculate with respect for one another's ideas, I think it's all fun, and I think that's what we're doing here. But to be so locked into those ideas where you truly believe that's it.
Well, I don't think that, when I first got involved in spiritual practices, I believed there was a specific teaching, and I believed, in fact, there was a specific teaching in Christianity. That wasn't the heart of what I was doing, but it was part of it. It was part of my search.
Yeah.
And eventually I found it. And once I found it, I began to practice it, which I practiced for probably something like 40 years. And I find that the specifics of the alchemical teaching, particularly the way I use it primarily, is to harmonize the various tendencies of the ego that obliterate the possibility of really being transparent to higher consciousness. Let me give you an example. Like, for instance, if your tendency when somebody bothers you or says something to you that's nasty is to get back at them, right? Mm-hmm. To get back at them. So you're going to get back at them, and you're going to use an energy that's sort of like this. Well, part of that energy, in my understanding, is the energy of Mars. And part of it is the energy of Jupiter. Disengaged from the other planetary energies, like, for instance, the energy of, let's say, love, which I'm just making this sort of simplified, is Venus. So you have parts of your personality that are disengaged from this whole pattern where Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, the moon, the sun are all engaged together symbolically, there's a song by Leonard Cohen that talks about, it doesn't talk about the lost word, it talks about the lost chord. But it's sort of like that our personalities are sort of like potentially a very harmonious set of tones that are sort of like a chord, but much more complex. And that the teaching is of some of these things, like the Tree of Life, is to reintegrate these other planetary energies so that one becomes harmonious with the wholeness of the Tree of Life, which would be like the essence of personality that's harmonious with the divine presence.
I agree with all that. That's why I brought up the Kabbalistic, Hermetic nature of Masonry, which is best expounded on by Albert Pike. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love the Scottish Rites. I spend a lot of time with the Scottish Rites on my 32nd degree Mason. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. My caution is that some guys in Masonry don't get into that and are satisfied with the fraternity part of the organization, and they just hang out. I respect that. So they can be very good Christians or Buddhists, and they're uncomfortable with this type of stuff. And some Masons don't like Albert Pike. But hey, we tolerate each other. But let me go back to what you said. I wholeheartedly believe that. In fact, we get into a lot of esoteric in Masonry, and we talk about the planets, the influence of the planets. That's why I said as above, so below. So, but I go back to the point I made before, that once we see that as above, so below, it's also an artificial construct, because we're all one big consciousness, the goal being that we're transformed, and we then go back to a spiritual type of body, if you will. It's just that I don't know what that...
Well, you could have a longing for instance, buried treasure.
Yeah.
And you could, slowly, first it's just sort of an idea or a theory, and then suddenly you find yourself reading a few books on it, and then you find out, okay, there's an organization in Florida, say, as an example, where an investor can get involved in a treasure hunt, undersea treasure hunt, underwater treasure hunt. And then you go on that treasure hunt, and maybe a person like that actually finds a treasure. So I don't want to disregard the longing that man has for some kind of immortality of some nature, of some continuity of consciousness, which is more oriented towards the Western, sort of combination of both the Western and Eastern modalities that we speak of, being absorbed totally into the consciousness of God, or being sort of a manifestation of God that has access to that consciousness.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I talk about balance, because I'm a seeker myself. I mean, this is why we're talking. This is why you asked me to chit-chat about Masonry. And so I will continue to seek, and I think you will too. Yep. My point is, do we really know?
Well, you don't know. And you see, the thing about seeking is that in Masonic terms, or in other terms like it, or Gnosticism in general, you have to theoretically hypothesize sometimes before you find, like that treasure I was talking about. But but I'll tell you what, we will return in just a few minutes, and you have promised me that you will discuss something called Hermetic medicine that you've been working on for some time. Will you do that for me?
With pleasure.
Okay, we'll be right back. We are happy to provide our audience with two very exciting musical odysseys with Stephanie Slevin, a singer-songwriter from the United Kingdom. One is called Show Number 7, A Galaxy of Song, and the other is Show 21, I Talk with Angels, in our Threshold Radio archives in VegasAllNetRadio.com and YouTube. Here is one of our songs.
What goes around comes right back around, but that's not true for me. They say what goes around comes right back around, and that it comes in threes. Please bring me rest, bring me some peace. Please knock on my door, and I promise I'll ask for nothing forever, evermore. And step into the light. Close your eyes, embrace me, feel tomorrow. around.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them!" Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's West Side Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
If you like Threshold Radio, a program which deals with core issues affecting our personal, political, and spiritual lives, and advocates the creation of an enlightened, informed citizenry, not only in America, but throughout the world, then you might think of supporting both your product and business and our message by advertising on our show. All programs are archived and are supported in various ways, including social media, our outreach being broadcast weekly on VegasAllNetRadio.com, a very advanced internet broadcasting station, but also archived directly on our websites on YouTube and in SoundCloud. We believe in time we will have a very broad outreach. Through New Galaxy Enterprises, our parent company, we can create a wide range of marketing and advertising components to complement your advertising on Threshold Radio and increase your outreach in many creative and exciting ways. If interested, just go to www.thresholdradio.com and fill out a contact form with your interest. That's www.thresholdradio.com.
We're back with the final part of Threshold Radio. Today we've been discussing the essence of true Masonry with Dr. Rodier, who is also, incidentally, a doctor of medicine, but also an author, and also a radio personality, right, Doctor?
Yes, that's true.
Before we go into the really cornerstone of what we'll be talking about, something called Hermetic medicine, let's just briefly talk about your radio show and tell the people about it and how to tune in.
Well, I've been on the radio for 15 years, unfortunately, as we speak, in hiatus right now because of sponsorships. But you can still listen to recordings on my website. If you go to hugorodier.com, there are some old recordings there. I hope to get back on the air soon.
Okay, that's good. Threshold Radio, we have archived all of our shows, and you can get them at thresholdradio.com. Archiving is a great way to listen to stuff because you can listen to it whenever you feel like it, instead of being forced to, sit down next to a computer or hold your phone for 45 minutes.
Right.
Well, let's talk about Hermetic medicine. What is that, actually?
Okay, I call it Hermetic health, which is a little bit different. You'll see.
I'm sorry I said it wrong. Yeah.
No, it's okay. But let me give you a little bit of background. I'm a bit of a rogue medical doctor, even before medical school, because of all these esoteric studies. I felt that medical school was just a pharmaceutical mill, where you're trained to prescribe drugs for symptoms. And of course, a whole lot of people are catching on to this idea. And for 30 years, I've been practicing integrative health, which means the sum total of what we're talking about, particularly nutrition. But at the same time, studying esoterica, and on the other hand, physics, I began to see that we were talking about the same thing. And you can pick up Scientific American and dig for this. I can give you the quote if I can have a minute to go find it. But
sure.
It turns out that physicists have been saying for over 100 years now that everything about the universe is energy and information. And I'm sure you know that. Well, guess what? The ancients knew this. And the Kabbalah tree symbolizes just that. Strength and wisdom. Strength being energy, wisdom being information. And there's a third pillar in the middle, because you need to balance strength and wisdom, above, below, male, female, inside, outside, dark, light. You need to balance those creative forces. And that's why the Kabbalah tree has a third pillar, and it's called balance or equilibrium or beauty. That's why people are beautiful, because they have balanced personalities and features. And so balance or equilibrium is the union, the transcending of these two opposing forces into one in equilibrium. And we do that as humans. It turns out that another word for balance or equilibrium is homeostasis, which I know where I'm going. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
That's another word for health. Now tell me, what is a symbol for the medical profession?
Caduceus.
Exactly, which is two intertwined serpents around a middle shaft. And they're winged. These serpents are winged. Turns out that energy is symbolized by snakes, and birds symbolize wisdom. And so the caduceus held by Hermes, the god of balance, is the symbol of the medical profession. So what is the caduceus telling you? It's telling you about healing through energy and information, which is strength and wisdom, which is, Johnny, calories and micronutrients, energy and information.
Right.
Through nutrition, through understanding the forces of nature, male and female in balance, strength and wisdom. So these are all Kabbalistic Hermetic concepts that have been rediscovered by modern physics. They call it energy and information. To me, the caduceus is an amazing symbol. And that's why my new book, if you will, is called Hermetic Health, where I show that everything in the universe, from politics, economics, anthropology, philosophy, religion, health, nutrition, it's all based on energy and information. And I didn't make it a book. I made it into a PowerPoint presentation because I've written 4 other books that nobody's reading. People just quit reading books. And so I figured I'd make a very loaded image-based PowerPoint presentation with minimal prose at the bottom. See if that sells better, about everything that we've been talking about tonight, Johnny.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important. Certainly, nutrition has saved my life several times. And partially was the way we met was because of seeking some help along those lines.
Yeah, I'm glad that you came into my office.
You see, I think that people who are seeking the answers through nutrition, as I had to, because I was actually cured of asthma because of it.
Absolutely. I see that all the time. And not only asthma, but just about every chronic condition.
But you know, everything is contextual. You have to figure out part of it yourself.
Exactly.
But without somebody who knows something, I certainly would probably be dead by now.
Well, it's like what we were talking about. You know, we need coaches, we need avatars, but the real work needs to be done by us. Yeah. And that's a very Masonic concept right there, too.
Well, listen, Doctor, I really appreciate you being with us. And is there anything else you'd like to tell us about connecting with you if people need to?
Well, just check out my website. You know, it's HugoRodier.com, and it's HugoRodier.com.
Very good. Patricia Welch is clearly one of the most accomplished singers living today. Recently, she created a wonderful CD set called Great Entertaining: Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia. We have 2 complete shows with Patricia, show number 4, Evolution of a Singer, and show number 14, Cocktails with Patricia. You can find them at our Threshold Radio archives at VegasAllNetRadio.com and YouTube. Here's one of our songs. An absolutely amazing rendition of La Vie en Rose. This was originally performed decades ago by France's great singer Edith Piaf, who actually wrote this song. Thank everybody for listening, and we look forward to speaking with you all next week.
So, thanks for having me.
My great pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tes yeux qui font baisser la mienne, un rire qui sous-perçait sa bouche. Voilà la portrait sans retouche de l'homme qu'elle a j'appartient. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, j'avoue la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les gens, et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont j'ai connu la cause. Il a pour moi, m'a pour lui dans la vie. Il me le dit, là j'aurai pas la vie. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi mon cœur qui bat. Des nuits d'amour, plume finie, au grand bonheur qui prend sa place. Des amours déchirants s'effacent. Horaire, on a mouru. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle à tout bas, j'avoue la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les gens, et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont j'ai connu la cause.